There's no magic pill for anything. You have to put in the work. You have to drive it yourself. But these guys have these gigantic shops, and they're doing nothing more magical than other than being specific and being consistent with what they're doing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Home Service Hustle. I am your host, Jonathan Bannister, and today we have a very special guest. It is actually one of Cornerstone Marketing Solutions clients, Mr. Dylan Rucker with All Heart Heating and Cooling. Guys, he's going to tell you about his ups and downs, his failures, and his successes, and how every day he continues to grow and get better, and his whole recipe for how he does that. Guys, you don't want to miss this. Let's go. All right. Everyone, welcome to today's show. We have a very special guest with us. My name is Jonathan Bannister. I'm the host of Home Service Hustle. And today we have Dylan Rucker with All Heart Heating and Cooling out of Lancaster, California. Dylan, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You know, this is the first time that I've had what are you, an Angels fan, right?
All right, cut this. We're done.
All right, so he's a Dodgers fan. So let's talk about life growing up. You're from Southern California. You grew up in the LA area?
Yep. Grew up in San Fernando Valley and then in the Antelope Valley. So from right here in Los Angeles County, basically, all my life.
So how long you been doing this? I know your dad got you into the business. When did that start?
I always say that I was born into this basically because my dad was doing air conditioning when I was born. He basically, I was the firstborn child in our family. So he had told me that, I needed to get a decent job, and he was able to go to a little trade school and then get a job basically doing installations. And the rest is, he kind of followed that same path, going into service and becoming a really good service technician and being able to provide for his family with it.
So you said you were born into this, and I said, how long you been doing it? So I'm going to take a wild guess, like 62, 63 years? How long you been doing it?
Yeah. About that long, yeah. No, appreciate that.
All right, so look, Dylan's been a client of ours at Cornerstone. This is year 2 now, and we've somehow developed a very, in my opinion, I'll say a very special relationship, and that's kind of why our banter back and forth is the way it is. But how long have you really been doing it?
So I had my first air conditioning job when I was 17. I am 46 now, so do the math. Throughout my 17 to 30, I was basically in and out of doing air conditioning. I really didn't like it at all. I was kind of forced upon it because I grew up riding along with my dad when he was a technician, and I would do things now. I don't understand how that was okay back then. Things were different times. But I remember being like 11, 12, 10, right in that ballpark, and going on service calls with him. I remember specifically because we would be going into famous people's houses, basically, because he worked a lot in the Beverly Hills, Bel Air area. So it was obviously based impressions on me. But I remember we drove a little tiny Toyota truck with side racks on it, and we had a little CB radios that we would be dispatched out of. And then when it came time, I was 17, I was basically dropped out of school, decided, they decided for me, you need to go get a job, because I was going down a path that was not too pleasant looking, and got my first job with that and learned how to do air conditioning, basically.
So you were getting dispatch calls on the CB. I mean, you're only like one generation away to having like horse and carriage.
Yeah.
So what, you bought the company from your dad?
No. So, no. So he basically, he had worked for a bunch of different companies down in the San Fernando Valley, ended up hurting himself, and then decided, I'm going to business for myself. And we had moved up here into Palmdale, Lancaster area. And, he did pretty good for himself for a while, bought a company that was here for quite a while. So he was able to expand off of that, and then was able to take advantage of some of the housing tract booms that we were having in this area at that time, which was like 2004, 2005, 2006. And then he was right in the middle of the 2008 situation, which basically took them out. And at
Okay.
that time, I was living down in West LA, and I was working for a company out in Malibu, doing like high-end residential homes, new construction type stuff, a lot of service, a lot of replacement right down on the beach. And uh, I decided, everybody was flipping houses, so I was making a bunch of money on the weekends, and I was thinking this is going to be easy. So I saved up probably about $40,000 and decided to go get my license, and I started my own company. And right at that time, it was the transition from me doing that to 2008, everything crashing was 6 months basically. And then boom, he was out of business. I moved back up here with the intentions of trying to help him. And instead I ended up just taking his customer list and kind of working that, and then staying up here myself and, kind of going forward.
Okay.
Business. So
I knew there was a connection there between the list or the business and kind of what made you stay in that area. All right. So I know a lot of this story, and there's a lot of good stuff here. And I was, just kind of setting the stage. What I like about your story the most is that you don't have a problem admitting your failures. And I think that says a lot about you and the character and who you are. But you're determined to learn from those mistakes, and you're determined to get better every single day. And I think that's what is most important, like as a man and a business owner and a leader. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about, you start the business in 2008. I know you were actually taking some jobs back in LA in the early days that you hated that commute. And there was even maybe a business partner or something involved there. Let's talk about the early days, and then we're going to work our way into Dylan over the last couple of years.
So, in the beginning, it's easy because you can hustle and everything's determined based on what your actions are, which is good, but also, it limits you as well. So, I had two guys that had worked for my father that I knew. They were kind of friends of mine. So I utilized them once he went out of business, and basically they were my installers, and I was the technician for the most part. Okay. The first year, I think we did $90,000 or something like that. And, for me, it was all right, I'm making okay money right at this point in time. Next year we did 250, and it started moving up. And so, in my mind, I'm thinking the bigger the job, the more money, and, the better off I'll be. And instead, what it ended up being is the bigger the job, the more responsibility, the more opportunity to fail, and the more problems that come along with it, especially now being in, say, commercial or new construction. You're kind of reliant on a general contractor who may not know what they're doing. So the dynamics change quite a bit when you start going into that. So 2011, everything was going okay. But 2011, I got this decent job. It was down in, it was at a student housing building at the USC campus in LA. And at the end of the job, I was $50,000-$60,000 in debt. All my supply houses were closed. I was able to pay all the guys that were working for me, and then I had to basically chase down the owner to get paid. And at that point, I remember sitting, and it was February of 2012. I remember sitting there with my wife, and I'm like, all right, there's things I don't know. I understand that, and I have to figure that stuff out. So I started researching business plan and just stuff on business, and I came across BDR, which is Business Development Resources, which was like a consulting firm for heating and air conditioning companies. And they had a program for dealers that were under $500,000. And everything that they said in there was all the problems that I was having at that point in time. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to look into this. So I started talking to them, and I asked my father. I said, is this something you think I should do? And he says, nah, you don't need to spend money on that. But I knew that, I needed to get some information that he couldn't give me and that I didn't have. So I needed to figure something out. So I went ahead and signed up with them, and the rest was history as far as that goes. They helped me quite a bit in those first couple of years. So,
and I think that's probably a common problem. Actually, I know it is. I know many business owners, they let pride get in the way with them. They can't accept defeat, and they'll kind of go down the drain with the whole entire business instead of reaching out for help. And and I think case in point, kind of you asking your dad, he had been in business for a long time and he told you no, right? No, you shouldn't do that. But you don't know what you don't know. And when you see the mistakes that you're making, you saw the writing on the wall that you thought, if I keep doing these big jobs, I'm going to be more and more successful. And then all it took was one bad job going the wrong direction, and it puts you in a bad situation. I mean, what should you have made off of that job, and instead you were $50,000 in debt?
Probably a couple $100,000, but so I did okay for the most part of minimizing the damage, but I wasn't done yet. You know what I mean? So I wasn't done dragging along the bottom yet. So, BDR was able to help me start realizing the potential of what is capable, and then also organizing financials for the most part, and then being able to look at some of this stuff. And, I think, and I think that a lot of us in general, basically, the pride gets in the way, and we're know-it-alls, we're people that can fix stuff for the most part. And that doesn't translate sometimes into business the majority of the times. And asking someone for help as a technician is kind of like frowned upon for the most part, because you're a mechanic, you should be able to figure it out, right? And this is the old school way of thinking. I think it's like, I'll figure this out, I'll make it work, I'll rig it if I have to, so that way it can work. And if there's a will, there's a way. And with business, it was like, all right, I was able to stave off some of the bleeding, but I was learning some things along the way, and going through that path still led to a bunch of other mistakes, because now it was like, all right, well, maybe it wasn't the job that was the problem. It was just the way that I bid it, and the way that I organized it, and the way that I managed it, and the people that I had, and every other problem other than what I was taking responsibility for initially. So in 2005, I ended up bringing on a partner. And my idea at the time was okay, we were doing some commercial work. We were doing a lot of like high-end residential homes, like big houses with a lot of VRB stuff, and just high-end ultra luxury type houses. And I didn't have anybody that had the attention to detail and like the desire to do a good job that I had. We had workers, typical installers that they do a good job, but for the most part, some of these things take a lot of detail-oriented type, experience to be able to make sure that things don't cause problems for the most part. And my idea was my partner, who came in, very, very talented heating and air conditioning commercial guy, managed some of that stuff, managed some of the commercial stuff we were doing, and we will be golden, right? But one of the mistakes that I made was not identifying specifically with that relationship on who was responsible for what, and what were the metrics to measure to make sure that we were achieving what our goals were, and making sure that everybody understood that ahead of time. So we went to a path of growing in revenue, but losing a lot of money along the way, and not knowing exactly why. And it was in 2018, I realized that if we do not change, or if I don't change right now, we're going to be bankrupt probably within 6 months. And so I think it was October of 2018, I ended up just telling my partner, I said, we're done. And I terminated the partnership. And so that led, and I was a residential guy. I had started educating myself and involving myself a lot with the home service industry in general. So 2019, we basically finished off all of our contracts with commercial and new construction, and then we focused solely on residential service and replacement. So we probably got 6 months of just service and replacement for residential in 2019, kind of dialed in. So 2020 was a brand new year.
It was a brand new year. So I think you and I start talking sometime 2020, and so kind of let's talk about the branding. I know Dan Antonelli did both of your brands. Is that right?
He did, and he told me a long time ago, because we were DS Mechanical initially, and after talking to him, he said that's horrible. So and he said you need to change the name, and he's very blunt about it, which I appreciate now. Back then I was like, this guy's crazy, and he's kind of like, why would you say that to somebody? You know what I mean? And but he was 100% correct. And he said, you need to change the name. And I didn't understand why. And I said, no, we're going to keep the name. We're going to make it DS Heating and Air. And then he said, well, we need to, I'll do your logo, we'll do your wraps and all that stuff, and make it at least so where it's noticeable. And they did a little animated man. And it works for the most part. And I remember looking at it, and I said, this is ugly. And he says, he told me basically straight up, I don't care what you like. This is not for you to like. It's for it to make impressions on people. So that way they memorize it. They remember it. And that happened with it. The only problem is we had a horrible name.
Right.
That's kind of, and that always stuck in the back of my mind. And a lot of people don't understand why would you change names, and I didn't at first either. It was kind of like, all right, it's a lot of money to change. It's a lot of work to do that. It's a lot more work than I really anticipated realistically, and I thought I was prepared for it. But 2020 brought on a whole nother set of problems and a whole different mindset for myself. And I was kind of in a position to where I was like bound and determined to succeed and be something different than what I was in the past. I spent 10 years basically kind of learning and beating myself up and basically being in a position to where I realized I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to be in this position. So why not change it? So I said, you know what, we're going full throttle and we're going to change everything and we're going to set the standard that we want to function by, and everybody's going to function by in this company. And then this is how we're going to operate. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
I love it. And we're going to get into much more, detail of how your business is ran today compared to where, how it used to be ran. So 2020, at some point in 2020, you and I get connected. I start beating you up on Facebook and harassing you a little bit. What did the DS stand for?
It was Dylan Systems initially.
You came up with that on your own?
Well, I remember it was I had a deadline to file for the corporation to get my license put in, like my license tied with the corporation, and I had to have it sent off by a certain date, and I was procrastinating, and I didn't do any research or I had no clue of marketing or branding or anything like that at the time, and everything that I thought of was taken. So I was like, what, screw it, just put this down. I can always do something later, and that's kind of how it all started. So,
well, I remember thinking when we were talking, like, man, what is DSAC, or what was it called? DS
Heating and Air.
Yeah. But luckily, when you and I like really formed the official relationship, you let me know that you're going through a complete rebrand. And when I saw the rebrand, I saw what we were going to be working with, and you were going through getting the trucks and stuff wrapped, I was super excited to be a part of that from the beginning. And I love the brand. The new brand is All Heart Heating and Cooling. And, this past year with you guys partnering with Wizard of Ads, there's been a lot of amazing taglines and slogan stuff that have come out of that for y'all's radio ads and things. And obviously we've been able to, piggyback off of what they've come up with and be able to make sure that your omnipresence approach on the digital side, we've been able to use the same messaging. So you want to talk a little bit about what has really taken place since the rebrand, what your fears were, your concerns? Because I really think this is a serious problem with a lot of companies. They feel like, well, everybody already knows my company. I've been in business for X amount of years. We're already a $3 million company or $4, like whatever. They have all these excuses of why they should not go through the rebrand. But though in their mind, they're going, I'm going to be a $15 or $20 million company. They have that mindset that they're going to have this growth, but they're not thinking about what their brand is going to be able to do for them. And, I've had Dan on the show, and clearly I am a huge believer in how impactful the brand is for your business. I mean, it's going to drive down your cost on marketing. It's going to increase your conversion rates tremendously. You're going to get more direct traffic to your website and stuff because people are going to know the brand. So when they think of HVAC or whatever it is that you're selling or doing, they're just going to type that straight into the search engine and find you instead of putting your traditional keywords of like AC repair, air conditioning contractor. So talk about what some of those fears were. What made you ultimately decide to reinvest again? Because it only been, a year? Like how long was it from when Dan made your little logo guy and you did the original wraps and then you decided to do a completely different name?
From when he first branded us with the original name to now, I think it was 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
We were around. So, I mean, we were fairly well known around this area. I mean, we were not a gigantic company or anything like that, but we were doing pretty good. And we had the typical, how many trucks do you guys have? And we see you guys everywhere because they were very noticeable. They stood out very well. Um, and, I had a lot of people ask me, why would you do that? And then I had a lot of people going, did you go bankrupt? And, questions like that, because they thought, oh, this company went away and I opened a brand new company. And that's not the case at all. We just basically changed the DBA for the most part. And, I held on to it for a little bit since I had it, since he initially, we did the brand and he did the name and everything like that. And, coming into 2020, it was like, all right, a fresh new year starting. And 2019 was kind of a reality check also, because we had this pretty decent sized overhead, and, commercial and the new construction was bringing in a lot of cash. And when that was all gone, and we all of a sudden we're now just basically relying on service and replacement, it was like, okay, we really need to get our stuff together and start putting in some work in order to make sure that we can kind of, go forward. So 2020, we had a new business plan ready to rock, had a couple people on the team that were doing pretty good. And, still kind of, I guess, not too much of a clue of how this was really going to function 100%. And then COVID happened. And COVID was like, all right, this kind of threw a wrench into it. And I remember the first week of when COVID, everybody got locked down. And I was sitting there thinking, I think we had like 60 calls on the board or something like that. And we ended up doing 6. And it reminded me of when 9/11 happened. And I remember I was working for a company down in San Diego called Mozzie Heating and Air. And I was in the supply house when 9/11 happened. We were watching the towers get hit. And at that time, we were slammed with work. And then all of a sudden we had no work at all. And everything kind of changed. And I was sitting there going, all right, is this going to be another one of that? Are we really going to kind of, be in a bad position here? So I ended up basically at that time just going around, and I saw a couple other people were giving out filters, for free. So I just started doing the same thing. I went on the Facebook groups, started going around just telling people, if you need anything, let me know. I'll come drop one off, and I'd leave my car with them. And it kind of got me out of my head, but it also got me kind of in a servant type mode. And I started realizing, you know what, we just need to start going directly to our customers. And that's when you and I were starting to come up with different things we were doing. And actually, that was before that. But within a couple months, we were busy again. You know what I mean? So it was all good. So it kind of put me in a different mindset of how to actually function and be proactive at getting work and being there for our customers versus not. And at the same time, we were going through this election, and I'm sitting there going, all right, there's all this crazy stuff going on. There's all this negativity. Everybody's freaked out. Nobody wants to see each other. Nobody wants to talk to each other. And I started thinking, where are the leaders at in our, like the real leaders that we used to have? And it's like, I don't even, the neighbors don't want to talk to each other. We go to these houses. Nobody wants to answer the door. Just set it on the door and leave. People, when we're going into houses, they'll open their garage up. We don't get to talk to them. Stuff like that. It just seemed odd. And I understand everybody was scared. And I said, you know what? I want to be the type of person that sets a good example. And regardless of what the situation is, whatever color you are, whatever sexual orientation you are, it does not matter what it is. We are still human, and we all need the same thing. And when it comes down to it, the only way that we're going to survive and thrive is if we're there for each other. And that's kind of how I say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and we're going to change the name, and we're going to function a different way with all heart that kind of represents what I was thinking was we wanted to be. You know what I mean? And start being a proactive kind of force in the community. So
I love it. And I'm, while we're kind of on the subject of giving back, talk a little bit about the scholarship program that y'all are doing.
So, we're trying to be proactive at like bringing people into the trade. Everybody knows there's hiring issues and lack of work and stuff like that. And I've done a couple site visits to bigger shops, and it's kind of changed my mind on this. And I know that a lot of guys now, they're like, you have to train your own people. You have to train your own people. You have to train your own people. And so we took that seriously. And I partnered with one of the instructors down at the local trade school over here. I put him on my payroll, and we created basically our own little school to where we bring guys in, and we're requiring them to go to trade school before they can come into our school for a couple of reasons. One, they've invested in themselves, and they've taken whatever they want to do in their lives more seriously than, the typical heating and air conditioning guy, I would say. Two, they probably have a student loan, so they have to work, so they have something to work for. And three, they've actually been trained to learn. And that's made a big difference, because a lot of guys, including myself, if I sit in the classroom for too long, I start, gazing off or staring at my phone or getting rambunctious, and I can't sit there for too long. So you have to learn how to learn for the most part. And taking guys out of trade school, they've been taught for the last 6 months to actually pay attention and to take notes and to receive the information and then go out and implement it, So that's kind of changed. So we're in the process of setting up now some scholarships to be able to send guys to the trade school and then bring them here afterwards. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different things we want to do. It's just a matter of getting set up and making it happen. So
I love it. I love your war room that you call it. We've got it on some video content. We'll make sure to throw it inside of this podcast with some of the B-roll so people can see it. Let's talk about, so you and I start working together the end of 20, we roll into 2021, and our plan is we get started on things, but it's all about the rebrand. I think it launched in, was it March or April when we went live with it?
May 1st of 2021.
May 1st of 2021. Now, love the brand. I think, you can kind of speak on what the feedback has been from the community, what the radio spots and things that Wizard of Ads is doing for you, kind of what y'all are hearing. Y'all kind of turned yourself into a little local celebrity, if you want to say. What has that been like since the rebrand? Like, are you any regrets on pulling that trigger?
No, I don't regret anything I've done, even all the mistakes. And, there was a lot of bumps in the road right off the bat, as you well know. So, it's any obstacle you come across, you can always say, I regret it. And what does that do? That just gives you an excuse of why you didn't accomplish something for the most part later on. And that's not what I want to do. I want to learn from it. And I want to make sure going forward that either it doesn't happen or I know how to deal with it properly. So that way we can minimize the damage, and things are going to happen regardless. So I look at things now to where any obstacle that comes up, it's a matter of how do I deal with it? How do I learn from it? And how do I grow from it? How do I move forward from it? And that's kind of, I'm kind of glad that it happened. The obstacles along the path of rebranding happen, because I know going forward, it's going to make me stronger. It's going to make us stronger as a group. And it did. It opened up a lot of things. I probably wouldn't have invested in the Wizard of Ads if some of the obstacles I was having in 2021 weren't there, because it's a decent sized investment. And, I was focused on something else at the time, trying to make happen with us trying to, get lead gen and just the brand out in general. And then two, I was like, all right, we have a budget to work with. Well, when we launched, things took off pretty quick right off the bat, which I was surprised with. And, I think we grew 28% from 2020 to 2021 with the launch of the rebrand. And we had massive obstacles along the way that were kind of unforeseen. So that forced us into looking at other things now that are benefiting us greatly, I think. And that is working with Wizard of Ads and actually focusing on the brand more than just like specific lead gen type stuff. You know what I mean? And that has kind of changed the way that people look at us in the community, because now we're something that's helping. We have our All Heart Miracle grant. We give away money every month, and we get to go out, and we just did we went to Innovation Education recently. It's like a tutoring program for kids, after school for kids. And they were telling us some of the obstacles that they have with funding, and they're a nonprofit. So they were very appreciative. And I'm like, you know what? This is the thing, is that if all of us just had the mindset to help a little bit versus seeing what we can take from everybody, the world would be a different place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the mentality that we are living by at this point. Like, look, if we can help you, we'll help you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of starting to radiate out a little bit. So.
Yeah, we've got some special projects that we're about to kick off and work together with you and one of our other clients, Triple Play, and Stacy and Mike Ford. They're going to be on the show here in a couple weeks, and I look at the two of you as like, all three of you, but the two different companies as just very, very special people, special humans, and just special companies in general, because y'all truly do have big hearts for your community. And I think, like you said, if all of us would just get a little more in line there, the world would be a completely different place. Our communities would be a different place, and it would just kind of spread out. So I love what y'all are doing with the grants in the local community. I love some of the things that Wizard of Ads have come up with by, calling your team, one of the good hearts. And I think just being able to get that messaging out there and letting people know that everyone within your staff and your organization, like, they are one of the give hearts. They're there to help you any way that you possibly can. Let's talk about the training a little bit. Like, what does that look like even 12 months ago from what you're trying to do as far as getting a system in place that everyone is operating off of that same system so that you can set yourself up for that growth and be able to scale?
Well, one of the obstacles that we used to have in the past, and once in a while it'll pop up, is this is one specific. We would send one technician out, and he would do one thing, and maybe we'd have a call back, and then another technician comes out and does something completely different, and then starts telling him, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, right? Maybe the first guy wasn't very thorough, or just missed something for that matter, and then now you got another guy coming in there, who's very thorough, and he's basically, running right over what the first guy said. And what does that do to the customer? That confuses the customer, and that makes us look basically like we're incompetent for the most part. When maybe all the stuff needs to get done, it's just a way of communicating and a way of being thorough. So we're eliminating all that by creating a specific process. So where everybody goes in, no matter who it is, and they function a specific way. They look at all the stuff, they grade it based on whatever it may be and whatever it may need. So that way all the information is being sent to the customer, and everything, somebody can come and corroborate that for the most part. And then coming back on the back end of it, the support that they get, the technicians or the installers get in the field is, allows them the ability to be able to communicate that. So that way there's kind of safety points to where the customer is protected and taken care of along the whole path, along with us being thorough and giving great customer service. So the training revolves around basically following a process, making sure that they understand the consequences of not doing these things, along with doing them and protecting the customer, and then a lot of customer service training. I mean, that's our biggest focus, is making sure that whatever we do, we do it with a smile, and we make sure that we provide them the best customer service experience that we possibly could. So, and
you do it with all your hearts?
We do it with all our hearts, exactly. So,
all right. So now, let's say the last part of the show here to kind of talk about the amazing person that you and I kind of share mutually. So I introduced you to Cornerstone's fractional CFO, who has also, just like you, turned into a very dear friend of mine. And I introduced you guys, y'all kind of, did your thing, and you moved forward with working with her. What has that been like? What has bringing in the fractional CFO done for your business? And, talk about some of the things that she's doing and working with you guys that you didn't really, kind of even understand that was in the realm of what, a CFO would do.
There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff we hear, and we hear some of the bigger companies talk about specific things like, tracking everything, and, just being, looking at metrics and KPIs and all this stuff. And at a certain point, a lot of people don't know what those things mean. I didn't at a certain point, and I'm going, all right, what is KPI? I had to Google it, right? Key performance or indicator. And it's like, all right.
Yeah.
So when I first talked to her, she says, I'm more like a partner. Like I'm a team player for you. You know what I mean? And it's like, all right, I've heard that before. There's a lot of people out there that are offering services that, maybe they are good services, but she has kind of gone another level to where she brings a whole nother dynamic of information to me, along with experience at the same time. So now it's turned into, it kind of goes out. It's like, all right, I'm looking at this position, say for instance, we were hiring a key position. And I was bouncing stuff off of her like 5 minutes before I was bringing the person in to hire them, after I'd gone through a bunch of interview processes. And it's like I'm able to get information that allows me to make better decisions all the way around. And this is what she does for the most part, which is crazy because it's not just for financial stuff. It's also for people things, and then HR stuff, just business organization in general. So it's been an interesting relationship, and she's a great person, very smart as well. So.
Yeah, and all those things that you talk about, obviously I don't think I mentioned her name, but Angela Leopard is her name, and she came in to help us out in October of last year, and obviously she's plays a much more pivotal role with our company now, and a lot of that has to do with like a lot of things that Dylan's talking about, where I thought I was hiring her to help me forecast the future of my business and the money that is coming in. What do we do with the money? Because I think the big misconception that people have is understanding that your CPA, your financial team, like they're trying to figure out what to do with the money that's already come in and your taxes and things like that. Where what a CFO does and what Angela and her team does is they're looking at the money that hasn't come in yet, but that we're going to be bringing in. What is going to be best suited there? How do we hire? When are we supposed to hire? Which key roles are we supposed to be hiring? And the processes of which we're going to find this person. Insurance, she's played a huge role in making sure that we've got the right HR team and the right insurance and stuff that we need, and controlling those costs and understanding those numbers. It was ironic that when I found her and her husband have bought and sold multiple air conditioning companies, and where I thought I was just finding your typical CFO, she actually has an extensive background in the HVAC industry, and her husband just opened up a company here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so immediately I wanted to start introducing her to some of my clients, and she's made a huge impact on being able to help them understand their numbers better. And I love hearing, when she comes out of a meeting with you and helping me understand, like, what are some of the things that Dylan really wasn't looking at, or, a lot of contractors in for that instance. But one of those is your tech efficiency numbers. So kind of talk through what y'all been working there from that perspective, and what has been some of the things that y'all worked out there.
So, and this is kind of one of the biggest benefits, because especially being like in the space we are right now, and this is probably a lot of people, is that and being able to understand some of that stuff. Like, I was very random with what I would do. If I liked it or if I thought I needed it, I would just go do it. I wouldn't put too much thought behind it. And that hurt us. And that, for cash flow reasons, whatever it may be, making changes in here without thinking it through, and then now putting the whole team through another change. That I may change in a couple months again. Being kind of intentional with our actions. Now, it's like, slow down a little bit. Let's look at what everybody's doing, and let's strategically put things in place to move those metrics up, and make sure that whoever may be struggling, or maybe somebody's deviating from what we're training them to do, we can actually see that and have things in place to kind of flag us and go, okay, this is going offline of what we're actually planning out. She's been able to help with that, and kind of, I knew some of this stuff needed to happen. I just didn't know how to do it. I still don't know how to do it, but she's able to go, okay, this is where we're at. This is how we're setting up, and these are the numbers, and it helped feed us that information, so that way I can make better decisions on, whether somebody's struggling or not struggling, or somebody's doing really good, and maybe be able to reward them, or at least look and go, okay, this is where we need to be. We're here. How are we going to get there? And what are the deadlines and goals to get us there, and the things along the way that we need to implement to make it happen? And then once we get there, all right, this is what has to happen at this point. And now we can add on and add on and add on from that point, So a lot of information.
Well, I know I'm going to have her in the hot seat here in the next couple of days, and we're going to pretty much have a whole episode on this subject without putting any names and stuff out there. Can you talk a little bit? I know one project that y'all are working on right now that you've been doing is you are simultaneously testing out two different dispatch softwares. And we won't say the names of those companies, but you've been with one for quite a while. You're testing out an up and coming new one that's in the market. But what I find interesting is Angie and I met last week for several hours at my office, and this was a topic that where she was telling me about, and I was like, well, we need to do a podcast and talk about this. What have you seen that the data from these two pieces of software, because you're running it at the same time on multiple of your staff members, and the data should be consistent. And from my understanding from what she said, that's not the case. So can you go a little more in detail about what you're seeing?
Well, one of the biggest struggles I think that I've had is having technicians in the field. We give them all this training, and we complicate a lot of it, especially with some of the information we get from some of these people, some of these trainers. It's like, I'm all about learning. But you take somebody who maybe doesn't have that ability or isn't that up to speed of like where I am as far as trying to get information, and you start dumping all this stuff on them, and they kind of get lost. And then you want to hold them accountable to this process, and maybe they're not there yet. It's like, let's simplify that a little bit and make it to where they can actually function and grow and learn off of that themselves. And the one software we're looking at does that for the most part, allows people to follow a process that's pretty laid out for them, and at the same time create options that are kind of auto-generated without them having to put too much thought in it. Because one of the issues that we were having is these guys would make all these option sheets, and they had no relevance to the situation. And they would range from this all the way up to here. And the customers were looking at us like we were insane, and that's great to give options. I love giving options, but they also have to be relevant. They have to be practical to what the situation is. And then you have to be able to explain them correctly, so that way people understand why you're giving that to them. The other software kind of helps with that. And it's allowed some of the technicians to thrive by doing that, is if they follow the process properly. And these guys are pretty smart for the most part. They've been around what we do here as a company. They're able to actually bring in a lot more customers, and at the same time raise those tickets up to pretty big numbers for the most part.
So I think it was your inventory, like the cost on that between the two, like was off a couple of percentage points.
That's always off. So yeah, what it's done is it's allowed us to be a lot more efficient in the way that we function. It's allowed us to have less zero tickets, and then at the same time have much higher tickets, the ones that we are getting. So from last year to this year, our gross profit has gone up about 6%, which is huge for the most part. And that's made all the difference. At the same time, it's allowed us to basically be a lot more efficient with our overhead at the same time. So, there's a lot of different dynamics of, you pull this little lever, this happens, well, this triggers over here, and vice versa, and getting to understand those things. And right now we're kind of in the, she calls it the learning phase. It's like we're tracking everything. We're taking all these metrics, and then from that point, we'll be able to go, okay, next year, here's what we do. And we're able to basically dial that in and put the gas down here, pull back here, and have some information to make real decisions versus, just guessing or trying to hope for the best and spending money doing it,
I've seen the fancy spreadsheet that you get with your numbers and stuff on it. And, and she said, right now I'm teaching this to Dylan, and more, like each week he's learning these numbers and understanding things better. That, like you were saying, when you see one number get, below or above or under where it needs to be, you can pull different levers. But at the end of the day, there are certain metrics that you're trying to achieve that aren't about, revenue and things that, a lot of people are looking at. Like there are certain numbers within the business, your tech efficiency numbers and ways of running the business that are going to ensure that you're going to be profitable at the end of the year. And you could, a lot of times, understanding those numbers could essentially make the same amount of money that you did last year in revenue, make the same thing this year. But if you understand those numbers and you're running your business the right way, you're going to be much more profitable, and you're going to bring a lot more money home with you at the end of the day.
And, that's one of the things that, if you're in the Facebook groups and, following some of the other guys, what happens? Everybody's bragging about their revenue. then that's great and all, but what's falling behind it? And you've seen some of the guys in there talk about that openly, like, we went to this but we weren't making any money. And I lived that also. You know what I mean? It's like when we were in last year, for instance, I spent a lot of money, rebranding, and then trying to overcome some of the obstacles that we had with that. And this year I said, all right, the revenue I'm not concerned with. I just want to be steady and I want to be profitable. In the first couple of months of the year, we were kind of still figuring things out. And then I think it was, like May, we were able to get dialed in and everybody was functioning the way we needed to. I had to basically get rid of some people that were putting things in the way, that were kind of holding us back a little bit. And all of a sudden things went way up. And now from May to now, we've been very profitable from that point to this point. And it's like, all right, we're in a good path now to be able to have a nice foundation, be steady, be solid. And not only that, be profitable in order to fund that growth going forward. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of components there that you just, mentioned, but, I want people to understand that, he's talking about from hiring. He's had his ups and downs with getting the right people on the team. There's a book I see on his shelf there behind him called Traction by Gino Wickman. And, Dylan has recently implemented EOS, just like we have. Angela, helped us set it up back in October. And understanding those numbers, and the number one thing in EOS is right bodies in the right seats. Like, you have to have the right people on your team or you're never going to get to where you need to. You're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. Dylan has made some major shifts and changes, still looking for some key people within his organization that he's hoping to find here very soon. And, it's important to be able to understand how to navigate through those things. You've went out and brought on the trainer from the local college, from the tech school, making some of these moves to know that if you really want to scale and take your business to that next level, you're going to have to build these relationships and have these connections in place. And I know we're running out of time here, but I know you're big and have gotten much. Your growth has been huge over the last 18 months. I've seen for sure with your health, with your mindset. Talk a little bit about what made that happen, what kind of that growth has been like, and what are some of the things that you do on a daily and weekly basis to kind of keep up with your health and your mindset?
Well, I think it was just a kind of a hunger initially to want to be better, and accomplish something and actually not fail and get beat up left and right. It's like you can only take getting beat up in the ring so much before you turn around and say, all right, enough is enough, and start doing something different. So 2018, when I had my partner, it was financially, it was like I was stressing. I couldn't communicate with him good. I didn't know what was wrong again. I was in a place, I knew kind of what was wrong and how to get him on the same page. We were on two different planets, basically, as far as information and what should be being done. And that's why I said, and I talked to my wife, I said, what, there's no option here. There's no fixing this. And I had read Good to Great, Jim Collins' book. And at that point, that's when afterwards I said, what, I have to make this cut. This has to happen right now. I love the guy to death. And, it's just, like I said, two different paths for the most part. And at that point, it was like, all right, now it's all on me. I have nobody else to blame. I'm taking full responsibility of the situation. So I either better get up to par or I better get out of here, because either way, it's not going to be fun. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to do this to be better. So at that point, it kind of put me on a path to, to kind of grow. I listen and read a lot of books. I don't like reading books. I like listening to books, but I know that reading helps your mind. So I'll actually sit through things and I'll read stuff. I meditate often in the mornings. I have a specific routine. And then I started basically, exercising, working out, ride mountain bikes, I hike. And during a week, I work out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then I'll usually walk, hike, or ride a bike anywhere from 20 to 40 miles, something like that. You know what I mean? So just try to stay active for some matter. And what it does is, and I usually do it in the afternoon, the exercise part, when it's the hardest to do for the most part, because if you have a hard day and things are stressed out, it's like, instead of going home and dwelling in that part of it, I get to go and take it out on something or, work it out somewhere or another. And during those times, I'll listen to books or listen to podcasts. And, sometimes I feel like I overdo it and I got too much information. So I'm going in 100 different ways. So then I'll say, all right. And then I'll start making lists of things that I've learned over the last, say, couple months and things that are really important to me that I want to hit. And I'll say, all right, let's focus on these and start doing these things specifically. So it calms me down a little bit and it gets me into implementation mode versus just putting out fires, and trying to do a bunch of different things at once. So
maybe that's sometimes when I get a phone call, because every now and then you'll be on a bike ride or a trail walk, and I get some bad connection where like every 3 words I can hear you, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "I'm just out for a walk. Thought I'd call you." And so now I know you've been listening to too many podcasts and you're having a brain dump, so you want to call and let me dumb you down a little bit. All right.
Yeah, it's all good. You know what I mean? So.
All right, so we're to the end of the show. Is there you've seen it all? You've started out working for your dad at a very, very young age. You were born into this business. You started the business in 2008. You had your failures and successes, and you've been on a bumpy road. You had a business partner that was not operating on the same frequency that you were. Now you're to the place where you are. You're understanding your numbers better. You're on a path for success. You and I we've set some big goals for next year, and I've already made you that promise that we're going to hit those goals. What do you tell a contractor out there that's in at some part of your past, they're in one of those places that you've been, and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They don't know how they've got all these problems in their business and they don't really know where to start, or maybe they're having success, as far as revenue goes, but they're still broke essentially. What do you tell someone? What is that? What is one piece of advice, right? We don't want to give them too much because we know they won't implement everything or they won't be able to, but where would you say the first thing that you would tell them to do for some advice here?
I think it's more of a mindset of doing something right off the bat. It's just being open-minded and being willing to learn. Like I said, a lot of people, they go into this because they were a technician or they were, an installer or whatever it may be, and they think it's going to be all, rainbows and butterflies. But it's a different animal for the most part. So being able to adapt, to change, to learn, to grow is the most important thing. So I'll start reading books, start learning from people. There's a ton of people. And realistically, I started doing visits to other shops, and I've done anywhere from, our size up to, I went to Gettle, I went to Any Hour. What's the guys in Utah? Any Hour? Yeah, those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, these are giant shops, and it's like the amount of information and the things that you see there. You want to know what's shocking to me, right? It's like it's like there's no magic pill for anything. You have to put in the work. You have to drive it yourself. But these guys have these gigantic shops, and they're doing nothing more magical other than being specific and being consistent with what they're doing. Yep. Right? It's like you have to be consistent with everything. If you set up a process, run that process. Teach everybody that process. Have everybody on the same page as that process, and be consistent with it. And if you can do that all the way throughout and document that stuff, then you'd be good. But a lot of times it's like inconsistency, and I struggle with this a lot. It's like I'd go to my installers. Okay, we're going to do this. Everybody, we train on it. Okay, great. And then I leave, and then I go over here and put out this fire, and then 2 days later they're like, oh, he's already gone. We don't got to worry about that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the consistency leaves. So it's like now I go to jobs every day. I drop it on text just to let them know that I'm here and that I'm watching and that we have a standard that we're upholding, and I'm holding everybody accountable to that. So
I think being intentional, and I think we could probably take this advice, as a human, as whether in our case as a father and a husband and a leader of a business. You got to be intentional, and whatever that is, be intentional and go full force and make sure that it's being implemented, and that the whole company understands what you're trying to achieve and accomplish here. And I think making them a part of it, and obviously EOS has taught me a lot, and I think you as well, that it's sharing those goals and the ideas and the company culture and everything else that goes with that, sharing that and making sure that everyone is bought into it, making them a part of it from the very beginning, and making sure that everyone believes and sees and wants to execute to be able to hit that end goal. So, Dylan, I appreciate you being on the show. Looking forward to having you back. We'll have you back after we hit that big goal next year, and I'll see you in person in next month in Vegas.
Yeah, I will see you there.
All right, Dylan, I appreciate it, man.
All right, I appreciate you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Yep.